Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is how I'm going to use Chronometer to measure my food intake. So here, as you can see, you've got a dashboard. Now, it will look different if you're using your mobile phone app, but the principles remain the same buttons kind of apply. So all you'll have here is your energy summary, which basically means the calories that apparently you take in and burn. Ignore that. I'd probably get rid of this altogether. It just takes up space on the screen. What I'd be looking at here is the macronutrient targets. So they're these here. Now, this is where I apply what we know as the mass balance model. Effectively what we call mass in, mass out. Now, that explains that the best determinant of our body composition and weight is by measuring our food intake by default of the macronutrients. That means protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Now, the other method, calories in, calories out, or the energy balance model that I just completely, written off, is not a great measurement. Scientists have compared the two and found that the results were not that great for the calories in, calories out methodology in terms of repeatability, reproducibility of the results when comparing body composition outcomes using each methodology to track food intake. Now here you've got the protein, carbohydrates and fats. So what you can do is set a target. Now it's useful for people just starting up on the carnivore diet perhaps. So the way you go about this is by clicking on profile and targets. Also I've got my private information here. Now my body fat scales actually sync to this software, which is quite useful. It's not very accurate at all, admittedly, but it's there, it's something. Now this is just the calories in, calories out thing. I don't know what it's defaulted as, I just ignore it. But anyway, yeah, so we're going to scroll down and we look to the macronutrient targets. So these are your targets. So if you've looked at my other videos, you should be able to work out roughly where you need to start. So what I'm saying to most people is 1-to-1 in terms of protein to fat grams. So in the example where someone is 80 kilos and 10% body fat, it's relatively lean, all I'm going to say is 80 in terms of kilos, 80 kilos times 1.75. Now that means 140 grams is the starting number. Not the end point, not the default you have to always stick by, but it gives you a rough guide to start. So all you do is just type that into here, 140 grams. Then you'd also match that with the fat grams, so 140 grams. Now, depending on what your current diet is like, that will also impact that. If you're very physically active, you might actually increase these amounts. So my suggestion, rather than doing 1.75 grams, just do 2 grams per kilo. So you're looking at 160 grams of protein to start with. Now, what do I do with carbohydrate grams? Ideally, you keep them as close to 0 as possible, but it's useful to have a target, at least to just keep under. And it means that therefore you've got a reference point to go by, because some foods will have carbohydrates, for example, dairy, eggs, and even if you're eating a heap load of meat, very unlikely, but that will have maybe a gram of carbohydrates in it through muscle glycogen. But for most people, I'd say ideally keep it below about 20 grams. That'd be a good place to start. Now, some people looking to push the boundaries with gaining weight may want to kind of add in what I call the carbohydrate insulin model. So that'll mean that your body be more receptive to storing weight, be slightly inflammatory, but it may aid recovery processes. What I found is when you increase carbohydrates through dairy and eggs, things like that, it means you get actually a bit of a bump in insulin. Now, I'm not saying that that's useful for building muscle entirely. It helps you store nutrients, great, but it helps increase appetite. So that's where I find it is a useful lever. But again, the average person, 20 grams, maybe 30 grams is as much as you would want to go. So now we've got our starting macros. What we're going to do, let's go back to the diary. Then we're going to click on food. So here you've got a load of random things which I've added over the years. Bear in mind, I have been doing this now for about 8 to 10 years. Now what I'm going to say is, say you want eggs in the morning, you're going to say eggs. You're going to say, I'm going to have 6 large eggs for breakfast. So that's 6 large eggs. Now, what you can see here is the macronutrient ratios, not entirely important. But it does say, you got a good balance between protein and fat, because the grammage in terms of what's here, so 37.7 protein, 31.8 fat, is quite similar. So that kind of goes along with my guideline. Now, what you do next is, say you want to have, I don't know, so we got some cheese, good example. I'm going to say here is you might have, I don't know, say 60 grams. So that's a good size serving of cheese, I'd say. Now, if you're looking here, you've got 51 out of 160 grams of protein, 5.4 out of 20 carbs, and 51.8 out of 160 grams of fat. Next, we'll look at, say, milk. So this is the one that I use because it is a very fatty milk, raw milk I use. So if you're going to have raw milk like myself, you might have a cup of it, which is something like 200 grams or so. So here you've got a pretty good breakfast. It's lots of dairy, lots of eggs. If you're suffering with autoimmunity, maybe don't have this much, have less, or have something else. We're going to choose some different foods now. We're looking at here, say, trying to find some chicken. There we go. So we've got chicken breast here. And let's say that's, I don't know, for the next meal, say 250 grams. That is a large chicken breast. So you look here, we're updating things now. We're getting more protein, more carbs, more fats. The fat slipping behind. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a fat source. So I'm just doing this as an example so you can see what I kind of think about when I'm making a plan for myself. So I might say, I don't know, 30 grams. Now I tend to use fat as a lever to increase that substrate in my body. What I notice is a lot of people undereat fat. So you're going to make sure you want to get enough in, especially if you're transitioning to a carnivore diet. Now we've still got about 52 grams of protein to play with. So what I'm going to do is find a steak. If we find ground beef. And we're going to go for this one, which isn't too fatty, but not too lean. You see, that's put me about the right protein, about the right carbs, but still too low on fat. So what you might actually do is, rather than having that, you might get rid of that. So you can delete it. Yes. Then do ground beef again, but I'll look for the 20% fat one. Now you're going to have to play around with it. Obviously, when you're picking fatty meat, it will have less protein by gram. So of course the protein's gone down here. So what I might just do, looking at this, I might just add a bit more protein through the chicken breast. So what we can do is view or edit selected food and find the grammage amount, which should be somewhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit the grammage amount for this one, so we got a bit more protein. I want to say it's 300 grams, might make it a bit easier. So there we go. So we've got enough protein, enough carbs, enough fat. I'm only saying enough because our limit is 20 grams there. So next we're looking at the fat. So we've got about 20 grams of fat to play with. So what you might do is, say you like, I don't know, tallow. Beef tallow, there we go. Let's say 20 grams there. Keep it simple. Round numbers are quite helpful to do. So here we've got a complete nutritional carnivore diet plan. You've got 2 sources of meat here, 2 sources of fat, 2 forms of dairy and some eggs. It's a pretty good mixed diet, I'd say. So this would be useful for someone that's about 80 kilograms that wants to start the carnivore diet. And assuming they're in a pretty healthy state, they could probably do this straight away, but I would suggest transitioning slowly over a period of about 4 to 8 weeks. So what someone might actually do is they might say, take out the fat from here. So you might actually get rid of some fat. What you notice here, there's a bit of a difference here. So I'm actually losing fat grams. I'll do this one as well. So someone might start, again, this is so individual. I couldn't work it out for someone without speaking to them, but they might say, I'm going to add in, say, well, I don't know, a banana. So we've got a banana here, which is quite handy. Say maybe 2 bananas. So usually 2 bananas is about 200 grams, at least over here it is anyway. So here we can see the macronutrient grammage amount is still not ideal. Remember, we're looking for a point to transition to initially. So what I'd say here is I've actually reduced fat by 40 grams, so 160 to about 120-ish. So therefore I'm going to add in 80 grams of carbs. So if I started on 15, I'm going to end at 95. So I need to get this number up to 95. So here you're going to go and find, I don't know, maybe some potato. You'll find it without skin. So potato without skin is going to have less oxalates, less fiber, so it'll be a bit of a better choice in my opinion. I'm not sure how much we need, but we're going to find out. So we've got here 200 grams of carbohydrates. Probably could reduce that a little bit. Reduce this one down to 180. And here you can see we've got a pretty even macro balance to transition to. So protein here has by default gone up a little bit, but that's not the biggest deal. You'll notice that these numbers do go up and down a little bit. I wouldn't stress about it. As long as you're within about 5 to 10 grams, either way, you're pretty much on point. Then from there, find out what maintains your body weight. If you have a particular goal to gain muscle or lose fat, you manipulate these sort of things. So usually it's the fat or carbohydrate intake you're manipulating. What I find useful is people need to work out which one of these macronutrients they need. If you need any help interpreting which one you need more of, whether it be protein or fat, book a consultation with myself and I'll be able to help you through there. Give me a whole background history of what you're doing right now and what you're trying to achieve, and I'll be able to best assist you that way. So hopefully that's been useful to you guys. It gives you a summary of how to use Chronometer, everything you need to do to edit, add and delete foods, what things to look out for, and where to start when you're transitioning to a carnivore diet. Thanks very much for watching. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. Build muscle and lose fat on the carnivore diet.